Most people believe that if a nuclear bomb ever goes off, survival is impossible without a $1 million underground shelter. But the truth is very different. History, science, and survival experts all point to one important fact: survival is possible, even without a bunker. How to survive nuclear war without a bunker. That's the topic we're covering today here on The Safe Side. If you want more practical survival guides and knowledge that could one day save your life, make sure to hit subscribe and stay prepared. Here's the roadmap. We'll cover what to do before a blast even happens, what to do during the explosion itself, and maybe most importantly, what to do in the critical hours, days, and weeks afterward. We'll also take a look at lessons from history, and I'll give you practical steps that anyone, anywhere can take to dramatically increase their odds of survival. This isn't about scaring you. It's about making sure you have information that most people don't. If sirens ever blare in your city and an alert flashes across your phone, you won't have time to Google what to do. You'll need to already know the steps, and that's what we're covering here. To give you some perspective, when nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, tens of thousands of people survived, even those living surprisingly close to ground zero. Many lived long lives afterward. The difference wasn't luck alone. It was also about where they were, how quickly they reacted, and what protection they had in those first few moments. So the bottom line is simple. You don't need a bunker to survive. What you need is awareness, preparation, and the ability to take fast action. By the end of this video, you'll have a survival playbook you can use in your own home, without expensive equipment. Let's start by understanding exactly what a nuclear weapon does, because the better you understand the threat, the better you'll know how to counter it. To survive a nuclear war without a bunker, the very first thing you need is a clear understanding of the threat itself. Movies and TV shows often exaggerate the effects, making it seem like the entire planet would instantly burn to ashes. That's not how it works in reality. A nuclear blast is devastating. Yes, but its effects depend heavily on location, size of the weapon, and immediate response. So let's break it down into the three main dangers of a nuclear detonation: the blast wave, the thermal radiation, and the radioactive fallout. The blast wave. When a nuclear weapon explodes, the first danger is the shock wave, a wall of super-pressurized air that demolishes buildings, flips cars, and throws debris at lethal speeds. This can extend for miles around ground zero, but here's an important fact. The destruction weakens quickly the farther you are from the blast center. People several miles away often survive, especially if they are indoors or shielded by sturdy structures. Thermal radiation. The second effect is heat. A nuclear explosion releases an intense flash of thermal energy capable of causing severe burns and igniting fires. This is why you should never look directly at the flash. Temporary or even permanent blindness can occur, but again, survival is possible. Even thin barriers like walls, hills, or simply being inside a building can shield you from the worst of this thermal pulse. Radioactive fallout. The third and most long-lasting threat is fallout. Dust and debris pulled up into the sky by the explosion, which then rains back down coated in dangerous radiation. Fallout can spread for tens or even hundreds of miles, depending on the weather and wind. This is why the hours and days immediately after the blast are so critical. The radiation is most dangerous at first, but it decays rapidly over time. In fact, scientists use something called the 7-10 rule. After 7 hours, radiation levels drop to about 1/10 of their initial strength. After 48 hours, they're far lower still. This is why sheltering in place, even in an ordinary home, makes a huge difference. Now let's clear up a few common myths about nuclear war. Myth number 1. Everyone dies instantly. Reality. Unless you are at ground zero, survival is possible. Even people in Hiroshima, just a mile from the explosion, survived by being indoors. Myth number 2. Fallout lingers for centuries everywhere. Reality. Fallout is dangerous in the short term, but radiation levels drop fast. After 2 weeks, most areas are safe to re-enter with precautions. Myth number 3. Only bunkers guarantee safety. Reality. While bunkers help, even improvised shelters, basements, thick walls, makeshift barriers can block most radiation. Understanding these three dangers, blast, heat, and fallout, gives you the knowledge to counter them. You can't stop the bomb from exploding, but you can reduce your exposure. A solid building, heavy shielding, and quick decision-making are often enough to tip the balance between life and death. In short, survival is not a fantasy. It's a science, and once you understand what you're up against, you're already one step closer to making it through. If you don't have a bunker, your best defense is preparation. And the good news is, preparation doesn't require millions of dollars or fancy equipment. It comes down to three main things: supplies, shelter, and mindset. Let's start with supplies, because these are the items you can gather today gradually without breaking the bank. The most important resources in any survival situation are water, food, and medical items. A person can survive for weeks without food, but only about 3 days without water, so storing a safe water supply is essential. Experts recommend 1 gallon per person per day for at least 2 weeks. That comes out to about 14 gallons for each person in your household. You don't need expensive containers or specialized survival gear. Ordinary clean plastic bottles or jerry cans work fine. As long as they are sealed and kept in a cool, dark place, they can sit for months or even years without issue. Food comes next. In a nuclear survival situation, refrigeration won't be reliable, and you may not have power for cooking, so the best choice is shelf-stable, ready-to-eat items. Think about canned beans, rice, oats, pasta, peanut butter, powdered milk, and packaged meals that don't spoil quickly. These foods last a long time and can be eaten with little or no preparation. A smart target is to stock at least 2 weeks' worth of food per person. Alongside food and water, a solid medical kit is crucial. Radiation sickness weakens the body and makes even small injuries dangerous, so you'll want to be able to treat burns, cuts, and infections quickly. Your kit should have antiseptics, bandages, pain relievers, ointments for burns, and any prescription medications your family depends on. Beyond these basics, a few other essentials can make survival far easier. A hand crank or battery-powered radio will keep you connected to emergency broadcasts when the internet and power grid are down. Flashlights with spare batteries are critical, as is a way to seal your shelter from radioactive dust. Plastic sheets and duct tape work perfectly for this. Masks, ideally N95s, help reduce inhalation of fallout particles, while gloves, knives, and simple tools give you flexibility in emergencies. Think of this collection as your survival pantry. You don't have to purchase everything in one day. Slowly build it up, one item at a time, until you have what you need. The second major step in preparation is shelter. Without a bunker, your best strategy is to use what you already have. The goal is to put as much dense material as possible between you and fallout. Radiation doesn't penetrate solid mass well, so the thicker the walls, the better your chances. If your home has a basement, that's ideal. Underground soil is one of the best shields against radiation. If not, then a central room in your house with no windows, a bathroom, hallway, or pantry can work just as well. For those living in apartments, the middle floors are usually safest, away from both the roof and the ground level, where fallout may settle more heavily. Even if your chosen room doesn't feel protective at first, you can improve it. Improvised shielding works surprisingly well. Stack books, boxes of rice, or heavy furniture around the walls. Line up bags of soil or sand if you have them. Even water containers filled and stored in your shelter space act as excellent radiation absorbers. Think of this space as your mini bunker, created inside your house. Every layer you add between yourself and the outside world improves your protection and buys you more time. Of course, your home might not remain safe forever. Fires, structural damage, or spreading fallout could force you to leave, and that's where a go bag becomes essential. A go bag is simply a backpack you keep packed and ready to grab in seconds. It should contain enough food and water for 3 days, a small first aid kit, a flashlight, spare batteries, a portable radio, masks, gloves, and a change of protective clothing. Sealed copies of important documents, like identification or prescriptions, can also be lifesavers in the chaos that follows a disaster. You don't want a bag so heavy that you can't move quickly, but you do want the essentials that keep you alive if you need to move on foot. Preparation is not only about gear, it's also about daily habits. A few simple routines can mean the difference between panic and survival. Make sure your phone is always charged. Learn your local emergency sirens and alert systems so you recognize the warning immediately if it comes. Identify sturdy buildings near your workplace, school, or regular routes where you could quickly shelter if caught outside when an attack happens. Most importantly, practice a drill with your family. Decide which room is your safe room, what each person should grab, and how to communicate if separated. When panic sets in, your brain doesn't think clearly. Practicing these drills turns survival into muscle memory, so you act automatically under stress. And finally, perhaps the most important element of preparation is mindset. Nuclear war sounds terrifying, and it is, but fear alone won't save you. What you need is calm focus. Survivors of Hiroshima often reported that those who acted quickly, finding shelter, covering their bodies, and staying away from windows, were the ones who lived. Those who froze in fear or ran blindly into danger were often not as fortunate. You must train your mind to follow a simple rhythm. Pause, protect, act. Don't waste time panicking, don't waste time debating. Every second counts. So the bottom line is this: you don't need a bunker to prepare. What you need is water, food, medical supplies, a safe room inside your house, a go bag for emergencies, and the mental readiness to use them. Even ordinary apartments and houses can be transformed into effective shelters with a little planning. Every ounce of preparation you do now gives you more time later. And in a nuclear crisis, time itself becomes your greatest ally. With this preparation in place, you've already increased your chances of survival dramatically. But what happens when the unthinkable does occur, when the blinding flash and deafening roar of an actual nuclear blast hits? That's what we'll cover in the next section. What to do in the first terrifying minutes during the explosion itself. If the unthinkable happens and a nuclear bomb explodes nearby, the first few minutes will decide whether you live or die. This is the moment when quick action matters most. Even if you've prepared, survival depends on how you respond right after the flash. The very first sign of a nuclear detonation is almost always a blinding light. It will be brighter than the sun, and it can cause temporary or even permanent blindness if you look directly at it. The instant you see that flash, you need to act. If you are outside, don't waste a second staring. Drop flat to the ground, face down, and cover your head with your arms. This may feel instinctive, but it's essential, because the blast wave is coming. A few seconds after the flash, a wall of air moving faster than a hurricane will rip through everything in its path. By lying flat, you reduce the chance of being thrown or injured by debris. Stay down until the shockwave passes, then move quickly to find shelter. If you're indoors when the flash happens, your best move is to get away from windows immediately. Glass will shatter under the pressure of the blast, sending shards flying like knives. Move into the most central part of the building, ideally a basement or interior hallway. If you can, close doors behind you as you move inward. Every layer helps reduce radiation exposure once fallout begins. Heat is another immediate danger. Within seconds of detonation, thermal radiation spreads outward, igniting flammable materials and causing burns. But here's the key. Even lightweight barriers like walls, curtains, or simply being behind a solid object can block most of that heat. If you're outside, use anything you can, cars, ditches, walls, even a low curb, to shield yourself from the direct line of sight of the fireball. Radiation exposure in the first few minutes is also a risk, but remember this rule: time, distance, and shielding. The more time passes, the more the radiation weakens. The farther you are from the blast, the safer you are. And the more shielding, walls, soil, concrete, even water, between you and the outside, the lower your exposure. In those first few minutes, your number one priority is to get inside the best shelter you can find. If you're caught in the open and there are buildings nearby, head to the nearest sturdy structure as soon as the shockwave passes. Don't run blindly. You have about 10 to 15 minutes before the most dangerous radioactive fallout begins to drift down from the sky. Use that time wisely. Once indoors, head to the lowest, most central area, away from windows and exterior walls. Seal openings if possible. Many survival experts refer to what's called the 10-50 rule of radiation. It means this: if you can get to a good shelter within 10 minutes, you cut your exposure dramatically. If you can stay inside for 50 minutes after the blast, you avoid almost all of the deadly initial fallout. This simple rule could save your life. It's important to understand that panic will kill more people than the bomb itself. The instinct to run outside, to drive away, or to search for loved ones in those first moments is strong, but it's often deadly. The safest move is to stay put, protect yourself, and wait for the initial fallout to settle. The roads will be clogged, Fires may be spreading and radiation will be at its peak. Staying indoors gives you the best chance. So to recap the first few minutes, if you see the flash and you're outside, drop down and cover. Wait for the shockwave, then find shelter as fast as possible. If you're inside, get away from windows and move to the center or basement of your building. Use whatever you can to shield yourself and stay calm. These few minutes are the most dangerous, but also the most survivable if you take the right steps. Once the blast has passed and you've found shelter, the next phase begins, the hours immediately after, when radioactive fallout starts to blanket the area. That's where survival gets even more challenging, and that's what we'll cover next. The blast may be over, but the real killer is only just beginning: radioactive fallout. When a nuclear bomb explodes, it vaporizes soil, buildings, and everything in its path. Those particles mix with radiation from the explosion and get carried high into the sky. Within minutes to hours, they begin drifting back down to the ground like invisible dust. Fallout is the single most dangerous threat after the initial detonation, and surviving it requires strict discipline. Here's the truth: fallout can spread for hundreds of miles depending on wind and weather conditions. The closer you are to ground zero, the more intense and deadly it will be. That's why your shelter becomes your lifeline. In the first 24 to 48 hours, what you do inside your shelter will decide whether you make it out alive. The most important rule during this time is to stay indoors. Do not leave your shelter unless it's absolutely necessary. Fallout particles are invisible and can coat everything outside: roads, cars, trees, rooftops. Breathing them in or letting them touch your skin increases your risk of radiation poisoning. The thicker your shelter's walls, the safer you'll be. Basements, underground parking garages, or even improvised shelters like tunnels offer better protection than ground-level rooms. If all you have is a normal house, stay in the most central room and stack furniture, books, or even filled water containers against the walls for extra shielding. Radiation is strongest immediately after the explosion, but it weakens rapidly with time. This is known as the 7 to 10 rule. For every 7-fold increase in time, radiation drops by a factor of 10. For example, after 7 hours, the radiation level is only about 1/10 of what it was right after the blast. After 49 hours, roughly 2 days, it's just 1/100th. That's why the first 24 to 48 hours are the most critical. If you can endure that period indoors, your chances of survival rise dramatically. Now let's talk about what you need to do inside your shelter. First, protect your air. Fallout dust can enter through cracks, windows, or vents. Seal openings with duct tape, plastic sheeting, or even wet towels if that's all you have. Avoid using fans or air conditioners that draw air from outside. If your shelter has ventilation, try to block or filter it as best as possible. Breathing clean air is non-negotiable. Second, ration your supplies. You may not know how long you'll need to stay inside, but at minimum expect 2 full days before radiation levels drop enough for safe movement outside. Conserve water and food. A person can survive longer without food than without water, so prioritize hydration. Store drinking water in clean containers and keep it sealed. If you must drink from uncertain sources, filter or boil it. Fallout dust in water can be deadly. Third, manage exposure when using the restroom. Fallout doesn't just poison through the air, it can contaminate surfaces. Use sealed bags or buckets for waste if normal plumbing doesn't work. Keep waste separate from living areas to prevent the spread of disease. Fourth, monitor for signs of radiation sickness. Symptoms include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, and fatigue. These can appear within hours if exposure has been high. While you may not have medical treatment options, staying calm and conserving your strength is essential. Stress weakens the body's ability to cope. Fifth, maintain communication if possible. A battery-powered or hand-crank radio is invaluable. Emergency broadcasts will provide updates about fallout zones, safe evacuation routes, and aid stations. Without communication, you're in the dark, and panic can set in. If you don't already have a radio, understand this. In a nuclear survival situation, silence can be deadly. What about sleep? Yes, you need rest, but it's important to stay alert, especially in the first hours. Rotate watch shifts if you're with others, so someone is always awake to listen for updates or monitor conditions outside. After about 24 hours, radiation levels will have dropped significantly, but not completely. This doesn't mean it's safe to wander outside freely. At this point, only brief trips outside should be considered. and only if absolutely necessary, for example, to check for water or to reinforce your shelter. If you must go out, cover your body completely with clothing. Wear a mask or cloth over your mouth and remove your outer layers before re-entering your shelter. The goal is to avoid bringing fallout dust back inside. By the 48-hour mark, radiation levels should be much lower, though still not harmless. This is when you can start cautiously planning your next steps. Evacuation may be possible if authorities announce safe routes. If no communication is available, your best move is still to stay sheltered until at least the third or fourth day. Remember, every hour that passes makes the outside world less deadly. Patience is as much a survival skill as preparation. To sum it up, the first 24 to 48 hours after a nuclear blast are all about minimizing exposure. Stay inside, seal your shelter, ration supplies, monitor your health, and wait for radiation levels to drop. Those who can resist the urge to flee too soon and instead focus on endurance inside their shelter will have the highest chance of surviving. Surviving the fallout isn't about bravery, it's about discipline. And once those first 2 days are behind you, the path to long-term survival becomes clearer. In the next section, we'll talk about what to do after the danger has begun to fade, how to rebuild, find resources, and move forward in a changed world. Once you've survived the blast and endured the first 48 hours of fallout, your focus shifts from immediate survival to long-term endurance. The world outside will not be the same. Cities may be damaged, infrastructure broken, and normal life suspended. But if you've made it this far, your odds of surviving the days and weeks ahead increase with every passing hour. The challenge now is not only to stay alive, but also to adapt. The first step in long-term survival is knowing when it's safe to move. Radiation does not disappear completely after 2 days, but it weakens rapidly. By the end of the first week, radiation levels in most fallout zones will have dropped enough to make limited movement outside safer. If you have a Geiger counter or dosimeter, you can measure exposure levels. If not, you'll have to rely on guidance from emergency broadcasts or community observation. The general rule is this: the longer you wait inside before venturing out, the better your chances of avoiding harmful exposure. When you do decide to go outside, your first priority will be water. Clean water sources may be scarce, and rivers, lakes, or open reservoirs could be contaminated with fallout particles. The safest water will come from sealed containers you stored beforehand, underground sources such as wells, or collected rainwater after the initial fallout has settled. If you must use surface water, filter it through cloth, boil it thoroughly, and if possible, add purification tablets. Remember, radiation doesn't always make water glow or look different. Contamination is invisible. Treat all water with caution. Next comes food. Packaged, sealed food inside cans, jars, or wrappers is generally safe to eat, as long as the outside is wiped clean before opening. Fresh produce or exposed items from outside are far riskier, since fallout dust can settle on their surfaces. If farming is possible in your region, soil contamination will be an issue in the short term. Root crops like potatoes and carrots may be safer than leafy vegetables, but everything should be washed and peeled. Long-term survival may depend on hunting, fishing, or bartering with others. After food and water, the next essential is shelter stability. If your original shelter is intact, it may serve you well for weeks or months, but damaged buildings, fires, or limited supplies may force you to relocate. When moving, choose areas away from city centers, as these will likely remain more contaminated and dangerous. Rural or high-ground areas may offer cleaner conditions and easier access to natural resources. If evacuation orders are given and safe zones are established, follow them. Organized shelters will provide not only resources, but also information. And in a post-disaster world, information is as valuable as food. Another key to long-term survival is community. Humans are not built to survive alone for long. Isolation brings weakness, but cooperation brings strength. Sharing resources, building defense, and pooling knowledge with others increases everyone's chance of survival. In a nuclear aftermath, law enforcement and government systems may be slow to return, and neighbors will become allies or threats. Choose carefully who you trust, but understand this: survival is easier in groups. Health and hygiene also become critical in the weeks following a nuclear event. Medical care may not be available, so preventing illness is your best defense. Keep wounds clean, Wash your hands regularly if water allows, and dispose of waste safely. Radiation weakens the immune system, making even minor infections more dangerous. Improvisation will become a vital skill, creating soap from ash and fat, using cloth for bandages, or building makeshift latrines. Mentally, the long-term challenge is even greater. The trauma of surviving a nuclear war will weigh heavily, and depression or hopelessness can be just as dangerous as radiation. Maintaining routines, such as setting watch schedules, keeping records, or assigning tasks, helps preserve structure. If you are with family or others, encouraging one another, telling stories, or practicing faith and hope can keep morale alive. In survival, mindset often determines outcome. As time goes on, rebuilding becomes possible. Small gardens can be started, fishing or hunting can provide protein, and scavenging abandoned areas may yield valuable tools or supplies. But always use caution. Radiation hotspots can linger for months in some areas, especially close to the original blast site. If you must scavenge, keep trips short. Cover your skin and decontaminate upon return. Communication will also play a role in rebuilding. If radios, ham networks, or even word-of-mouth travel remain, information about safe zones, surviving communities, or aid distribution will spread. Staying connected can help you avoid danger and find opportunities. Don't assume you are alone. The world may be fractured, but others will be fighting to survive too. Over time, weeks will turn into months, and the environment will slowly stabilize. Radiation will continue to decay, making farming and rebuilding safer. Governments, if intact, may re-establish order, and aid may arrive. Until then, survival is about endurance, adaptation, and patience. So, the key points of long-term survival are clear. Wait until radiation has dropped. Secure water and food cautiously. Strengthen or relocate your shelter if needed. Form alliances when possible. Protect your health and maintain hope. Rebuilding life after nuclear war is not easy, but it is possible. Humanity has survived countless disasters, and those who endure the worst often become the seeds of renewal. In the next section, we'll address an equally important topic: myths versus reality. Many people believe dangerous survival myths about nuclear war, and falling for these could cost lives. By separating fact from fiction, you'll be better prepared to protect yourself and those around you. When it comes to nuclear war, myths and misinformation can be just as deadly as radiation. Movies, TV shows, and even casual conversations have created many false ideas about what happens during and after a nuclear explosion. Believing these myths can lead to panic, poor decisions, and ultimately lower your chances of survival. Let's break down the most common myths and uncover the reality behind them. Myth 1. If you're near a nuclear blast, survival is impossible. Reality. This isn't true. While being at the center of the blast means instant destruction, most people won't be at ground zero. In fact, the majority of potential survivors are outside the immediate kill zone. Many who take quick shelter and follow survival steps can endure the explosion, fallout, and aftermath. Survival is not only possible but likely if you respond correctly. Myth 2. Radiation lasts forever. Reality. Radiation from fallout decreases quickly over time. Thanks to the 7-10 rule, levels drop to 1/10 after 7 hours and 1/100th after 2 days. While some contamination lingers longer near the blast site, much of the fallout becomes far less deadly within days or weeks. Long-term survival is realistic if you know how to avoid hotspots and wait out the decay. Myth 3. Underground bunkers are the only way to survive. Reality. While bunkers provide excellent protection, they're not the only option. Ordinary basements, interior rooms, and even improvised shelters can dramatically reduce radiation exposure. Anything that adds layers between you and fallout helps. It's about shielding, not luxury. You don't need a millionaire's bunker to survive. You need resourcefulness. Myth 4. Nuclear war means instant extinction of humanity. Reality. Devastating, yes. Extinction, no. History has shown us that humans are remarkably resilient. Even in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, survivors lived long lives after the blasts. Entire communities rebuilt from the ruins. While a large-scale nuclear exchange would cause immense suffering, the idea that no one survives is simply false. Myth 5. Radiation sickness is always a death sentence. Reality. Not all radiation exposure is fatal. The severity depends on the dose. Mild to moderate exposure may cause sickness, but can be survived with rest, clean water, and nutrition. Only very high doses are deadly. Recognizing symptoms early, like nausea, fatigue, or skin burns, can help you adjust your sheltering strategy and reduce further exposure. Myth 6. You should flee the city immediately. Reality. This instinct can get you killed. The first 24 to 48 hours after a blast are when fallout is most dangerous. Roads may be jammed, resources scarce, and radiation levels at their peak. The safest move is to shelter in place and wait until levels drop. Evacuation should only be attempted when conditions are safer or authorities give the all clear. Myth 7. Food and water are ruined forever. Reality. Fallout contaminates exposed surfaces, not everything permanently. Sealed food in cans, bottles, and jars remains safe. Water from underground sources or protected containers is drinkable. Even soil can be farmed again after radiation decays. Short-term supplies may be limited, but long-term nature recovers. Myth 8. Radiation makes people glow. Reality. This is pure Hollywood fiction. Radiation is invisible. You can't see it, smell it, or taste it. That's why fallout is so dangerous. Protection and monitoring are essential, not waiting for glowing signs. Believing visual myths could cause you to underestimate real danger. Myth 9. There's nothing an ordinary person can do. Reality. Ordinary people can do a lot. Simple steps like sheltering, sealing openings, rationing supplies, and waiting out fallout save lives. Knowledge and discipline matter far more than expensive gear. Survival depends on preparation and decisions, not superhero strength. These myths exist because nuclear war is terrifying, and fear often breeds exaggeration. But the truth is clear. Survival is possible. By separating fact from fiction, you gain power over fear. You can act with clarity instead of panic. And in a crisis where every second matters, that clarity can mean the difference between life and death. In the final section, we'll wrap everything together. A complete summary of survival steps, final tips, and a reminder of why staying calm and informed is the ultimate survival tool. We've now walked through the entire roadmap of surviving a nuclear war without a bunker, from the moment of the blast, through fallout, into the longer days of rebuilding. It's not a simple path, but it's a possible one. And survival in such a scenario isn't about luck. It's about knowledge, preparation, and calm decision-making. Let's recap the essentials. When the flash happens, protect yourself immediately. Drop down if you're outside, move away from windows if you're indoors. In those first few minutes, your priority is shielding from the blast wave, heat, and flying debris. Then, once the shockwave passes, your focus shifts to shelter, getting inside and staying inside. The first 24 to 48 hours after the explosion are the most dangerous. Fallout is invisible but deadly, and your survival depends on minimizing exposure. Seal openings, ration supplies, and resist the urge to flee too soon. Patience is not just a virtue, it's a survival tactic. Beyond those first 2 days, survival becomes a matter of endurance. Clean water, safe food, and stable shelter are the cornerstones of staying alive. Joining with others, protecting your health, and maintaining hope will carry you through the weeks and months ahead. Remember, radiation decreases rapidly with time, and the world does recover. Even in the darkest moments, there is a path forward. It's also vital to clear away myths. You don't need a luxury bunker. Humanity doesn't vanish instantly. Food and water aren't permanently poisoned. These false ideas only spread fear. The truth is simple. With the right actions, survival is absolutely possible. So the final tips are these. Learn the basics now, before disaster strikes. Preparation beats panic. Always prioritize time, distance, and shielding when it comes to radiation. Stay indoors during the fallout period. Those first 48 hours are non-negotiable. Protect your mind as much as your body. Hope, discipline, and calmness save lives. In the end, nuclear war is one of the greatest threats humanity can face. But history shows us that people can survive, rebuild, and even thrive again after devastation. The real weapon against fear is knowledge, and the fact that you've taken the time to learn this information already puts you ahead. This has been The Safe Side. If you found this guide valuable, make sure you're subscribed and share it with others. Because survival isn't just about saving yourself. It's about giving your family, friends, and community a fighting chance too. Stay safe, stay informed, and remember, the more prepared you are, the safer you'll be.